Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to SEMO TV. I'm your host, SEMO. Today, we're going to get into a very spicy topic, the hot topic of the day. Donald Trump caught on a hot mic on the Howard Stern show saying some pretty ridiculous and very stupid things. Whoa, let's get into this. All right, well, finally, the left has something they can actually sink their teeth into. This is an awful thing to say, awful way to say it, and definitely did not age well. But I got to give you guys a little perspective from an old man like me. Look at the gray in my beard. There's a little something called perspective. And if you guys want to go back in time with me, let's take a little trip down memory lane. If you want to go back into the early 2000s, this is well before Howard Stern was even filming his show. This was just on radio. And back then, Howard Stern was quite a controversial character. He had a show that was probably 80 to 90% male audience. What he loved to do is bring on women, exploit them, young women. He'd give them 5 minutes of fame, no money, have them do sex acts, disgusting behavior. It was an absolutely disgusting show. I personally never listened to it, but I know that, it was a show for men. Men liked it. Men listened to it. That was a little after Howard Stern had just come out with that movie, Private Parts. It launched a career for people like Jenna Jameson. And, Howard Stern is misogynist, sexist. He's certainly calmed down in his old age with his billions of dollars that he's that he's acquired since then. And he's certainly become quite the champion of the left and quite the anti-Trumper. However, back then, he not even back then, but even till into this day, Howard Stern is an incredible interviewer. In fact, I think he's one of the most underrated interviewers that exist. And at the time, he was just on the radio. There was no video component, and there was no internet back then. I mean, there was, but there was no real internet the way we know it today. So there wasn't like a thought of, hey, everything I say is going to be used against me later. It was just like, hey, we're on the radio. We need to say crazy things so that people listening are going to continue to listen. That was just the way it was. And trust me on this, I really remember this is really the case. And to give you some examples, this is the same time that Jimmy Kimmel and Adam Carolla had a show called The Man Show. And I don't know if you guys are fans of Jimmy Kimmel. Personally, I'm not. I know he's big with folks on the left, but he had this show, The Man Show, where he had young women jumping on trampolines for no reason other than to just have them jumping on trampolines. And in fact, I remember a segment where he had an underage girl that he established in the segment was underage, right, then reach into his pants for some reason. I don't know, he's pulling out a sock or I don't know, something. But it was just, it wasn't cool. I remember being uncomfortable back then watching it, but his male and female audience were still laughing at it. It was acceptable. Comedy Central aired it. These are things that were acceptable for whatever reason. Now, Howard Stern had a show that was absolutely about the exploitation of women. There's no two ways about it. His movie, very similar, exploitation of women. And Donald Trump is a showman who absolutely understands his audience, no matter what the audience is. I mean, the guy was on WWE. He was a wrestler like at some point, right? And if he's on Howard Stern, he understands who he's talking to. He's talking to like 80, 90% men. And what does Howard Stern do? As the great interviewer that he is, he plays to Donald Trump's ego brilliantly. He goes, Donald, hey, I know you just got married, but you think if you weren't married, you could still pull young chicks like 24 years old? What do you think Donald Trump's going to say? Yeah, of course I can. Of course. Oh, yeah, I could probably pull younger than that. Oh, really? Oh, really, Donald? Howard is just, egging him on. Yeah, well, 12 is too young, ha, ha, ha. Poor taste, poor joke. But especially today. You cannot, never say anything like that today. But back in like the early 2000s, that wasn't like the worst thing you'd hear on the radio. In fact, it never got any juice. Like nobody called it out back then. Why? Because that was the sort of thing you would expect to hear on the Howard Stern show. Now, again, Donald Trump wasn't running for president at the time, and now he is the president. So bringing this up is awful. And you should bring it up. He's the president. You got to give the guy a reflection and go, dude, this is you and now you're the president? So, hey, left, you got to celebrate the win. You finally got one. It's been 11 years since grab him by the pee. That's the last thing you had on the guy. And honestly, like, you got the Epstein list that came out. We have 3 million pages of incredible amounts of guilty parties across the lines who run Hollywood, Washington, the media, and all of those people have been telling you, begging you, making you hate Donald Trump for the last 10 years. And now they're all guilty in these Epstein files. And yet most people on the left are only obsessed with Donald Trump. Well, listen, you finally got one. Enjoy it. Okay. You've got your day, maybe a couple days, but once this is over, we got to go back to the real PDs, the real PDFs. All right. But for now, enjoy the win. Now, like I said, back then it was a little bit more accepted than it is today. A lot more accepted, in fact. In fact, you know, you go back in time, there were things that people were doing that nobody ever questioned. Like the lead singer of Aerosmith, Steven Tyler. Do you know that he went and started dating a 14-year-old girl? And then, I don't know if he paid, but he took the 14-year-old girl away from her parents and he became her legal guardian so that he could like tour with her and, you know, be with her. Yeah, 14. 100% true. And then, I don't know if you know, but like the rock legend, Jimmy Page, like when he was 30 or 31 in the mid 70s, was dating a 13-year-old girl. 13-year-old girl. She was like a groupie. You know what else? He passed her around to other rock stars. She dated a bunch of rock stars. I think she ended up dying in the early 80s, like ODing or something. True. And nobody's holding these guys accountable. They're still inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're still, you know, Obama's sitting there celebrating these guys, you know, over their incredible music. Like, hey, you know, yes. And these guys are not the president of the United States. I completely understand that. You know, so absolutely, this is an awful thing for the guy to have said. But what really happened there? Donald Trump is on the radio show. Donald Trump is a showman. And what does a showman do? He plays to his audience. And Howard Stern knows exactly what he's doing. You got to give Howard Stern credit. Tease it up for Donald Trump, knows exactly what he's going to get from Donald. Donald says, yeah, I can get young 24-year-olds, even younger. Hey, I cut him off at 12, you know, ha ha ha. Sounded to me like he was joking. Seemed like he was joking. And honestly, I think if you're into underage girls, you're not going to be joking about it. What do you guys think? I mean, am I off? I don't know. But I think you got to take a little perspective of the times and pre-internet and take it for what it is. It's an awful thing to say, especially in today's age of wokeness, after the Me Too movement, after the pussy hats and all that stuff. But you know, back then you got away with that kind of stuff. So for whatever it's worth, you know, bad today, bad back then, but you could get away with it. So, you know, but now the guy's president. So you gotta hold his feet to the fire. And, for whatever it's worth, that's my take. Thank you guys for watching. Wherever it is you are, whatever it is you're doing, hope you guys are well.